We are lucky to have as one of our next storytellers a woman from Illinois. I grew up in Illinois, so I love a good person from Illinois. But what Maryna and I just found out is that we have all these crazy connections to small towns in Illinois, and I think that's true of this monument, is that it somehow there makes you, long ago, distant related cousins of some sort. Maryna is the superintendent of Veterans Assistance Commission of Stevenson County, a small county in Illinois, sort of above Chicago, but before you hit the Wisconsin border, not too far from the Mississippi River if you go the other side. She served in the U.S. Army from 1966 to 76. She served in Vietnam in the headquarters in Long Binh, and she worked for a defense attaché as well in the U.S. Embassy in Cambodia. If you'll remember, that whole area was incorporated. She was there 72 to 73. She served a lot of other places with the U.S. Army. But what I love about Maryna is that she has with her today a sister, and nobody goes anywhere without having family in your back. So we are so grateful to have from the good Stevenson County of Illinois. Maryna, come join us.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm honored and humbled to be here, as well as some of the other speakers have mentioned this morning. Some of them could speak right off the cuff. I had to write everything down so I don't forget what I really want to say today. But I do want to thank the Vietnam Women's Memorial and the National Park Service guests and everyone here for allowing me to speak today and tell a little bit about my story. To all of our veterans, and especially all my Vietnam women veterans that might be around, I say thank you for your service and welcome home. I want to share some of my story by telling you who I am, maybe a little about who I am not, and some things I learned about life and death and about myself. I am the daughter of Stanley and Marion and Herb. My stepfather, Herb, was a World War II veteran, very proud of his service, but humble. So I didn't get to hear a lot about his story. He kept it to himself. He likes to tell one story about getting drunk with Mickey Rooney over in Germany, but he left. I think he left a lot of details out about that story. I am the sister of Marcia and Jim and Phyllis, who is here today, and John. My brother John served in the U.S. Army and was stationed in Korea during the Vietnam era. I always counted him as a fellow Vietnam veteran. He didn't have boots on the ground, but that didn't really matter between us. He was a veteran, and he was doing his job. And because we were both Army veterans, we had a common bond. We had a shared relationship that maybe my other brother and two sisters didn't have, but my young sister here today, we have a pretty good bond too. I am the granddaughter and niece and cousin and aunt of Polish and German relatives. Some are veterans, some are not. I love them all. I am the mother of Maryna Misewicz, who is a Navy veteran. He enlisted, which I'm proud to say that he enlisted before he actually became an officer, because I was enlisted in the Army. Then he graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. He commanded a ship, and he also served on the ground in Iraq in support of the Army. I like to tell him that's what he gets for going to Annapolis instead of West Point. And no matter what story my adopted son has, I love him dearly. And I'm always proud of him, because he has his own story as well. I am the grandmother of Merrick and Macy and Mallory and Maddox. My oldest grandchild, Merrick, just completed his plebe year at the U.S. Naval Academy. Looking forward to another Army-Navy game in the fall. I am a graduate of Lanark High School, which is in rural northwest Illinois. I do not live in Lanark anymore, but it's always going to be my hometown. I am a retiree, as many of us Vietnam veterans are, but I am still working. I get to serve veterans in Stevenson County as the superintendent of our Veterans Assistance Commission. It's truly a rewarding job. It's that saying that many of you might have heard, it's a hand up and not a handout. We help our veterans every day. I am a woman who enlisted in the Women's Army Corps, WAC, after dropping out of college, and then I became a veteran. This is where I started to learn some very significant and profound life lessons. There are stories I could tell you about basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and advanced training at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana. I could tell you about my first duty assignment at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I could tell you about things before Vietnam and during Vietnam and after Vietnam. My real journey did begin at Fort Sill because of the things I learned there and then in Vietnam. I learned about the importance of the training my fellow soldiers were getting in preparation for their next duty assignments. And that meant Vietnam for many of them. They needed to learn good things, hard things, but true things. This was 1967 that I was at Fort Sill. Things were heating up in Southeast Asia. I learned that women soldiers were not always going to be treated fairly, and that a man would get a promotion before me, not because he was a better soldier, but because he had a wife and child. I learned how to play softball. We didn't have a softball team when I was in high school. I graduated in 1964. I learned what it was like to travel to other posts to compete against other teams and what it was like to celebrate too much in the enlisted club. But I also learned that my fellow women soldiers would look out for me. I learned that I had to end my engagement to a wonderful man who chose to enlist in the Air Force rather than be drafted. I learned I had to go against his demands and follow my own path. You see, he did not want me to go to that far away place. So, being the independent and somewhat stubborn woman I was becoming, I volunteered to go to Vietnam. The Army said, "Sure, you can go. We need you there." It was there in that sometimes hot and dry and sometimes hot and wet country, so many thousands of miles from home, that I learned about service and sacrifice above self. I worked at the U.S. Army Vietnam headquarters in Long Binh, somewhere between Saigon and Bien Hoa. I was a paper mover. I worked long hours and many days without a break. I spent my nights watching reel-to-reel movies on a cement patio covered by a huge parachute. And when mortar fire came in, and when the ammo dump was hit, and when I was sound asleep in my bunk, and the siren announced incoming, I spent hours and nights crowded in a sandbag bunker with my fellow WAC. We didn't have rifles, ammunition, bayonet. All we had was a flak jacket, a water canteen to defend ourselves. And we had a wooden fence around our compound, ringed by barbed wire and one lone MP at the gate. That was our defense. We ate meals at the 24th Evac Hospital. And to get there, we often had to pass soldiers in line for surgery. But at work and at rest, there was laughter and there was lightheartedness. There was determination to get the job done. After all, there were men in the field depending on us to do our jobs fast, efficiently, and without complaint. So that's a little glimpse into Maryna Misewicz, who is also known by her Vietnam buddies as Marty. A lot of us had nicknames. Some of them I can't share with you, but a lot of us had nicknames. I told you at the beginning of this I would tell you what I learned. This is what I learned. I learned courage to endure, that ability to go on even under some of the harshest conditions, to be bold and brave like I'm being right now. I learned that innocence lost does not mean we can't hold on to that small inner child who dreams of better things for ourselves and the world. I learned that everything is black and white, that war is not always about who is right or wrong, or superior or inferior. I learned that my classmate Alan Mummert and the other two Lanark High School graduates who died in Vietnam and are on the wall gave their all for a cause. They swore that they would protect and defend our nation. They meant it when they raised their hand to say the words all of us who have worn a military uniform have bravely said. Those 3 men and so many, many other men and 8 women did their duty even though it meant a flag-draped coffin for each of them. After a while, and probably once the Vietnam Women's Memorial came to represent all women who served in Vietnam, I learned to acknowledge the heartbreaking job our nurses in Vietnam had. I learned not to minimize my own service just because my duties were not out in the jungle or in a military hospital. I learned to be gracious in answering the question that I've gotten so many, many times. When someone learns I served in Vietnam, and I got it this morning. Were you a nurse were you a nurse there? I learned about lifelong friendships. There were about 1,000 military service women who were administrative support types in Vietnam. We have our individual stories. We also have shared and common types of stories because we were women in a combat zone. My special Vietnam friends include Teddy, Priscilla, Ruthie, Jody and Marge, Peanuts and Jinx, and Judy, and others I spent hours and hours with in Vietnam. My 2 years in Vietnam from 1968 to 1970 and 1 year in Cambodia from 1972 to 1973 were some of the best of times and some of the scariest times of my life. Those years, those days, those hours were a journey that I carry with me every day. I am a better person for having served in the U.S. Army and Vietnam. I am proud of my service. I didn't lose myself in Vietnam. I learned. I gained so much. I am a soldier always. I am proud to say I'm a veteran, a Vietnam woman veteran. Peace to all of you. Again, to all my veterans, all my fellow veterans, welcome home.